I'm Stevia. So today I wanted to talk to you about lessons that I've learned with living with chronic pain and mobility issues. So here's how I'm going to structure the talk. I'm going to tell you my story, and then I'm going to get into some coping mechanisms. Some of them will be on the more practical side, and some of them will be a little bit more lofty and spiritual. And then I'm going to get into how to talk to people with chronic illness, because I think that's something that's kind of missing from our collective consciousness, and it's something that I'm very eager to spread. So here's my story, and it's going to be depressing for like 6 minutes. I am going to gloss over a lot of details for time, but I also wanted to include as much as possible, because I do realize I am one of the youngest people in the room, so I feel the need to establish my credentials, so I am going to go into it a little bit. So I started getting chronic pelvic pain in grad school, and nobody could make that go away. I've been going to physical therapy once a week and seeing a specialist every few months for the last 5 years. It's a kind of pain that I only experience under certain circumstances, so I feel lucky that it's not constant. But it does affect some parts of my life, and I've put a lot of time and money into trying to make it better with very little return. Then I also started noticing this pain in my ankles when I ran, and it started about 4 years ago, still in grad school. And I used to run several times a week, and I'd been playing ultimate frisbee for like decades. So it was upsetting to give up running, but I had a lot of other hobbies, and it hurt when I hiked, but not enough to be prohibitive. So I ended up feeling lucky that I could still hike, which is easily my greatest passion in life. And then a year into living in Tennessee, I started having a weird muscular pain in my forearms, and it would get really aggravated when I lifted weights, when I did pull-ups or rock climbed or kayaked. So we started encroaching on some more serious passions of mine. I've been rock climbing since I was 15. And that's really become kind of part of my identity. And I learned how to whitewater kayak in my 20s, and one of the appeals to living here in Tennessee was the access I was supposed to get to rock climbing and kayaking and all that stuff. I was also really excited to have the disposable income to return to martial arts, but after a few Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, I realized that my arms couldn't take that either. It started going into my stationary passions, anything that required repetitive motion with my hands. So guitar playing was out, mandolin was out. I stopped being able to make the jewelry I'd been hoping to sell on Etsy. I had to stop doing archery. And at work I had to be careful lifting heavy things. But if I cut activities out, I didn't have to live in chronic pain. I still resented the passions that I had lost, and I also lost a lot of time and money. I spent hours and hours trying different forms of physical therapy to get better. I drove to doctors in Murfreesboro, Franklin, Nashville. And it's been over 2 years, and to this day, nobody knows what's wrong. So all this was hard, having everything stack on top of each other and nothing was getting fixed. And I was, sad to give up some of the things that I loved. And especially since I don't have a lot of close friends or family in Tennessee, I'm kind of here on my own. But I was doing okay. I definitely had moments of despair and bitterness, but most of the time I was able to live my life. And I was really grateful for all the things that I was able to do. So no matter what happened to my arms, I could still hike and access the outdoors, which is easily the most important thing in my life. It's my career, it's my hobby, it's literally everything. And then I lost my knees. So I'll spare you the story of the slow descent from occasional pain to full nightmare that it is now. But I haven't been able to bend my knees in almost a year. I've lost so much mobility in the last year that I can't bend them more than 90 degrees. And when I try, it hurts worse than breaking a bone. They hurt when I hike, when I go up and down hills, up and down stairs, on any sort of uneven ground. And in the past few months, it's starting to hurt just to walk. On my bad days, I walk with a very pronounced limp. Even on good days, I cannot walk quickly or at a normal pace. I cannot move normally, sleep normally, or sit normally. I am in varying degrees of pain all the time. I've seen 19 practitioners over the last year, and nobody's been able to tell me what's wrong. I've done MRIs, blood tests, physical therapy, and I've driven to Murfreesboro, Franklin, Nashville, and spent probably hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars, and I've kind of gotten nowhere except progressively worse. So A lot of my passions are gone, almost all of them. I can't dance, I can't physically express my energy, I can't work out or do much outside. I can barely do my job, which involves a lot of field work in the summer. And you know, without the friends and family here, there's not a lot left in Tennessee for me. So I'm almost done, I promise. So now every day feels like a potential crisis to be managed. Very simple things have to be overthought. Have to be careful to find a parking spot close to work, so I don't hurt myself by walking too far. At the office, I try to combine trips to the bathroom with getting coffee so I don't walk too much. And going anywhere new causes me a ton of anxiety because I can't manage the situation for my knees, so I don't know if I'll encounter a hill or stairs, or so I try to avoid new situations. So if I'm not careful, I can spend entire days feeling panicked that I will never get my life back. So I'll stop there because that's plenty of information about my life, but I want you to know where I'm coming from for this talk. So in some ways, the idea that I'm going to give a talk where I give you great advice about living a happy and fulfilling life with chronic pain and mobility issues is a total joke. Like, I'm not handling this well. I've not been brave or strong. I have not reinvented myself. I complain. I indulge in self-pity. And half the advice I'm about to give you, I managed to implement like once a week. But it's a topic that I've been thinking about over the last couple years, and so it's something I really wanted to share. So what does a person in my situation do? How do you do more than just survive each day? My first piece of advice is to lower your standards. When you have mobility limitations, you have so many points that you can spend during a day. And little things take up more points than you're used to, like grocery shopping or cooking or cleaning. And this means you have to decide sometimes between doing something fun and taking care of daily life. And you can't always do both. My advice is to spend your points on fun things if you can, because life becomes pretty sad when you spend 100% of your energy on chores and then you can't do anything else. So if your house has to be a little messier, if you have to order takeout a little bit more often, do that if you can. It can be really worthwhile to give yourself a happiness boost instead. So far, my roommate has forgiven me. I'm not sure if he's noticed or not, but the house is messier. So now we've got framing. Framing is how you articulate your life to yourself. I can get a little poetic about how I view my life. And it works for good and bad things. So it makes me see the good stuff in my life as totally epic and great, but it makes me see the bad as like really, really awful. And I tend to repeat, you know, the awful view of my life to myself a lot, and that really wreaks havoc on mental health. And so while the bad framing might feel true, it's not a good look. Don't do it. So instead, I try to find the most bland way of describing my situation. Like, I have a chronic injury, so a lot of my hobbies are on hold for the moment. Or, my late 20s haven't been my favorite time in life, but I've learned a lot. Or, I'm really focusing on my art right now. Broad strokes, avoiding dramatic language. If done consistently, can make a really big difference in how you see yourself and your life and how you feel about it. It might feel a little self-delusional at first, but who cares? The bland descriptors are as technically true as telling myself that my life is a nightmare. But one of those framing options results in constant misery, and one kind of doesn't. On a related note to framing, I would try to recommend understanding the difference between self-compassion and self-pity. Self-compassion is really important, and self-pity is very unhelpful. It's okay to share relevant information with your friends and have them try to help you process what's happening. But I would find the line between that and bitter complaints that turn into stories that you repeat to yourself and that don't get you anywhere. So part of the reason I've taken this situation so hard is that movement, fitness, outdoors, all of that, were very intrinsic to my identity. I have no idea who I am without those things. And if you're having trouble relating to the outdoorsy stuff, I mean, just imagine being 29 and realizing that some days you can't stand long enough to cook dinner for yourself, or that you can't work in the only career you ever could picture yourself enjoying. So my problem here is that I'm clinging to fixed identity. In reality, we're not the same people as we move through life, and we're not the same people from one moment to the next. Thinking you are a static, unchanging personality is what Buddhists call ego clinging. Pema Chodron writes really well about this in her book, Living Beautifully with Chaos and Change. So I'm going to borrow from her a lot. She writes that once we have this idea, a fixed idea of this is me, then everything that happens to us is either a threat or a promise. We filter all our experiences through this lens. When things happen to us, we either like them because it confirms our self-image, or we reject them, sometimes violently, because it threatens our self-image. She writes that fixed identity is, quote, how we try to put solid ground under our feet in an ever-shifting world. Often the first blow to fixed identity is precipitated by crisis. When things start to fall apart in your life, you feel as if your whole world is crumbling. But it's actually your fixed identity that's crumbling, and that's cause for celebration, end quote. So I'm not at the point where I can celebrate my crisis, but it's interesting to try to embrace the idea that my life hasn't actually fallen apart. I'm still at least minimally functional. I can still clothe and feed myself. My life is free of violence, and I have a bed to sleep in. And there's a lot of things that I can no longer do, but the reason that I find that so tragic is because I'm viewing that through the lens of my fixed identity. And when I do so, I make my struggle a lot worse than it has to be. Losing your fixed identity is really hard. Even some of Buddhism's wisest teachers admit to struggling with stopping ego clinging. It's something that most people have to remain diligent about for their entire lives. And a really big tool in the effort to stop ego clinging is meditation. Honestly, I should probably talk about meditation a little more in this talk today than I will be, and this is the only time I mention it, but any endeavor where you have to alter the way your mind works, meditation is a really important practice. As you sit with yourself, you can become aware of how attached you are to your opinions and views of yourself. And meditation can help you train your mind to recognize when you're having unhelpful or clinging thought patterns and letting them go. Some days you'll have to recognize your thoughts and let them go hundreds of times a day. Sometimes you'll let it go of a thought, and then 3 seconds later you'll have to have the same thought and let it go again. But if you're diligent and consistent, one day you do notice that you have fewer of those thoughts. And that can make a really big difference in how you feel about yourself and your life, no matter what your health situation is. Ego clinging brings me to a related pitfall, and it's one that Zen teacher and podcaster Domio Burke has a really good Dharma talk about in her podcast, like Zen Studies podcast, something like that. Yeah. In one of her podcasts, she identifies our tendency to postpone enjoyment of life until everything is perfect. Now, I do this like crazy, and for me it kind of fits in with fixed identity. So I struggle with the thought that because of who I am as a person, it's impossible for me to be happy with my circumstances as they are. It seems actually wrong to be happy for me. And I think that Debbie Murawski, as I know her, could be nothing but consistently miserable in the life she's living right now. And when I realized I was doing this, it totally blew me away. I realized how much I was turning away from the things that can still make me happy, just because it doesn't feel right to be happy. And I think that's applicable to most of us when we go through a hard time. And letting go of that way of thinking can really change how it feels to go through something difficult. So Domio goes so far as to define our tendency to do this as part of dukkha, or suffering. And I'm going to go into a long quote, but it's really good. She says, quote, "As I check in with myself, I recognize the sense of discomfort and unease I feel about my life. It is this dukkha that keeps me from feeling fully alive and authentic. It causes me to hold everything at arm's length while I figure out what's going on, or leads me to struggle to put everything right so the discomfort will go away. The thing is, I never manage to figure out everything with my mind, let alone get everything permanently fixed so that my ride is perfectly smooth, ever. In the back of my mind, however, I hold on to the hope that relief is right around the corner as long as I keep busy. Maybe you react differently and feel despair or become depressed, but your core problem is still dukkha. In terms of how I feel outside of my life, I notice the ways in which my life feels unacceptable and resign myself to feeling fully present for life in spite of the pervasive inadequacy of my situation. This includes all of my feelings and thoughts of resistance to discomfort, loss, pain, shame, dullness, stress, whatever is bothering me. So here we are, I say to myself, surrounded by mess. Forget again. You'll never get it all done. This is incredibly unfair. Life can be so painful or horrifying, or boring or lonely. I don't have to like it. I don't have to approve of my own reactions to the crappiness. All I have to do is be with it. All I have to do is not turn away from my life. This practice is so subtle it's almost impossible to describe in words, but I'm going to give it a try. As I stop resisting the way things are, I refuse to postpone appreciation for my life until everything is perfect. I throw out the strident disapproval I've been carrying around in my heart as if it would shame everyone into changing. I loosen my grip on the almighty list of the way things should be and experience the bittersweet intimacy of the way things actually are. I wake up in the driver's seat. I come home to my life like Dorothy waking up in Kansas and being so delighted to be back in the situation she had recently run away from. End quote. So I've listened to this podcast like 4 times at least, and I identify with it on such strong levels, and it manifests itself in such large and small ways. Sometimes I find myself not listening to music that makes me happy because of my feeling that being happy is wrong or impossible right now. I find myself buying like nice new clothes and shoes but not wearing them ever because I don't want to bother looking good until I'm healthy. Because of course once I'm healthy then my whole life will be solved and I'll be this new fabulous person and I'll be more attractive and people will like me better. On a grander scale, I don't always embrace some of the things that could give my life real meaning because I already feel like all the meaning has already been lost and there's no point. So sometimes I skip meditation and I put my hammock out in the woods a lot less and I spend a ton of time scrolling mindlessly through social media just because it's a distraction. I don't want to engage with the things that make me happy because I don't want a reminder of all the things that I've lost. But in the end, that only makes me more miserable. So recognizing the way that you are turning away from your life because not everything is perfect is crucial to maintaining sanity through chronic illness. So to recap my advice through going through chronic pain or illness, we've got positive framing, letting go of your fixed identity, and embracing your life wholeheartedly even though things are not anywhere near where you want them to be. So with my last bit of time, I'm going to address a more likely situation. So hopefully not many of you will have quite the journey that I'm taking right now. But I guarantee you, all of you will interact with people who are chronically ill or injured, young or old alike. Where's my water? Sorry.
It's in the chair.
So I'll do my disclaimer right now. I can't speak for everyone who's chronically ill. And I am probably a little bit more sensitive than a lot of chronically ill people. However, I have been very close to a number of people who have become chronically ill at a young age, including my own brother for the last 9 years. So, like I said, I'm a little bit more sensitive, but there tends to be some broad strokes that I think holds true. So, first about assumptions. People love making assumptions about you based on what you look like. I'm young and I don't have anything visibly wrong with me. As such, I've been called lazy on several occasions for taking the elevator at work rather than the stairs. I have nodded along sympathetically with my coworkers in their 50s and 60s about the aches and pains of growing older. And then in doing so, been singled out and told, sometimes with real disgust, that I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. I might just work with assholes, I don't know.
Always a possibility.
Back when I was better and hanging out with my brother, I would carry heavier things with him, for him, at the grocery store or the hardware store. And then we'd have strangers berate him for letting the girl carry the heavier item. So I'd get all pissed off because back then I was in really good shape and they were implying that I was weak because I was a woman. And it wasn't easy on my brother, who I'm sure would have given anything to be normal and carry whatever he wanted at the store. So here's my constructive alternative. As a rule, don't tease or berate or otherwise comment to a stranger about their physical choices. Don't look at a young person taking the elevator and point and say, oh, the stairs are over there. Don't look at a person who is able-bodied in one of those electric carts in the grocery store and suggest that they save them for somebody who needs them. Having an invisible illness can really mess with your head because you're hurting and your life has changed and you are surrounded by people who are telling you there's nothing wrong with you. So if you feel moved to make conversation with somebody, comment on literally anything else because you could be ruining somebody's day. Once you know somebody who has a chronic illness, saying the right thing can sometimes be even trickier. It's easy to be well-intentioned, but still makes somebody sad with what you say. And that's compounded, of course, by the fact that everybody's different and it's going to react differently to what you say. So first, I would recommend really listening to what people are saying about their situation. I find that a lot of people tend to misunderstand the nature of chronic illness or injury. So if somebody says the word chronic in the conversation, I wouldn't end the conversation by telling them, oh, get well soon. Because that's and then don't follow them up by asking them every time you see them, oh, you feel better yet? Or y'all healed up now? And a few people do this to me consistently, and I have to say, no. Every single time, and it feels really awkward because they get all surprised and disappointed, and then I feel like I'm the bummer. So a better thing to do is ask, how are you feeling? Because it doesn't carry the expectation that they have to be better. Now, I'm going to complicate the advice I just gave you, because how are you feeling is a great question, but don't use it as your opening line every single time you see somebody. Many people with chronic issues can get really tired of talking about the same thing all the time. And they have other things going on in their lives, or at least want there to be other things in their lives. And it can get really exhausting to give a blow-by-blow update multiple times a day. I'd say as a good rule of thumb, if you're not close with the person but you see them every day, like at work, ask them twice a week. Or have a bit of unrelated conversation with them first and then ask. Don't let it turn into your only talking point. It's really, really nice to know that people are concerned, and it's really appreciated, but people can also get a little fatigued on the issue, so just read the room. You'll definitely want to read the room if you want to start making jokes about somebody's disability. You can try it on for size, and most people want to have a good sense of humor about their lives. But if they're blushing, or they don't have a response for you, or they give you one of these looks like, the joke is probably not appreciated. So for example, one of my coworkers thinks Gimpy is a fun nickname for me. And I've only ever hinted that he stops, but he thinks we're having fun. Another joke that I get is that I shouldn't be sad about my inability to access the outdoors because my friends or even my coworkers offered to piggyback me. And I know I should be able to take a joke, but I used to be in really good shape, and I'm young and I have pride that I have to swallow every day in 1,000 different ways already. And this is all new and scary and raw. And so most days I don't have it in me to laugh at a piggyback ride offer, or laugh as my friends envision a souped-up off-road wheelchair that'll, allow me to hike again. And when I politely suggest that those things make me sad, I sometimes get berated for not having a sense of humor about my life, or I get told that my friends are just trying to cheer me up, and how dare I not find it funny. So maybe a different person wouldn't mind the same joke. All I ask is that you check in. Is this person really laughing with me, or are they uncomfortable? Are they joining in, or are they hinting that I stop? So have the ability to take feedback, use caution, and read the room. I'd say as a rule, if you have a friend with mobility issues, don't suggest activities that they can't do and then make up for it by offering to carry them or giving some other flippant suggestion for how you might work around the disability. Propose something that they can do, or ask them what they want to do so that they can come up with something that's within their ability range. Now, I'm going to talk about a few of the comforts and cliches that I get a lot. And I think this is particularly me getting on my high horse, but I have the podium, so you have to listen to me. So at the risk of sounding ungrateful for the comfort that people try to give me, I have mixed feelings when people tell me that things will get better, or don't lose hope. because it doesn't always respect the battle that people have coming to terms with the fact that some things can be permanent. Optimism is appreciated, but sometimes it's far-fetched enough to not be relevant. You might say something instead that makes the person feel seen. You could comment that, wow, it must take a lot of stamina to keep going to physical therapy or to keep going to different doctors to find out what's wrong. Or you could simply say, I'm sorry this is happening to you. Because sometimes sympathy and understanding is a more solid comfort than optimism. That being said, if you have a real story about a time you were chronically ill for years and thought you had a terrible degenerative disease and then you magically got better, lay it on me. I like hearing about real experiences, especially if they end well, but it's empty platitudes that I don't find to be much comfort. At the risk again of sounding ungrateful, I have mixed feelings when people tell me how strong I am. People go through things like this only because they have to. And, you know, I could throw up my hands and scream and cry and not get out of bed in the morning, but breakdowns are kind of a luxury if you think about it. If I give up, there's no one to bring me food while I'm in bed. You know, I could not go to work, but then I'd lose my job and my health insurance. So eventually, I'm going to have to get out of bed and go on with my life. And when I do, I'll have all this stuff to catch up on. So breaking down is a very tempting option, but it doesn't make life easier. It makes it harder or impossible, depending on the level of support you have. So continuing to live life is often the path of least resistance, and I'm not sure it makes me strong. So to conclude, your life is not a romantic memoir or a motivational novel. You have to accept things might not go the way that you want, even if you do all the right things. Taking action to accept your life as it is has to be its own reward. The universe doesn't compensate you for good behavior by making your problems go away. Surviving chronic illness is not some cosmic lesson that you're supposed to learn and then walk away healthy and a better person. Sometimes it works like that, but sometimes you get progressively worse and have to live your whole life that way and learn how to be happy. This involves taking charge of how you view your life and how you experience your own tragedies. And sometimes the only benefit you get is just finding acceptance, and that has to be enough. So don't get overly poetic on how you describe your own tragedies to yourself. Try to engage in compassion without pity. Let go of your fixed identity and embrace all the things that you can be now that your life has changed. Don't postpone appreciating your life until things get better. Appreciate everything you have right now. In terms of being good to others, don't assume you know what others are going through. Listen well, ask questions, and please, of course, be kind. Thank you.